Hey everyone, welcome back to So Wizard Podcast, a rundown of AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel. If you're seeing this on Patreon, thank you so much for your support. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you'd like to get these videos a week early, along with other bonus content, check us out on Patreon. Number 82 on our list is 1927's Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Sunrise, the commonly accepted short version of the absurdly long name, is a romantic movie about a couple rediscovering their love. It opens on a married man, billed only as the man and played by George O'Brien, falling for a new woman. This new woman, appropriately called the Woman from the City, is played by Margaret Livingston. There's no build-up to this affair at all. The movie just kind of introduces these people and we're supposed to go with it. I guess structure and pacing wasn't on the forefront of people's minds in the very early days of cinema. These two, the man and the woman from the city, have a fling, and when Woman from the City wants the man to leave his wife and baby and join her in the city, she jumps straight to murder. It was actually kind of funny at how alarming and fast this suggestion came up, but again, it didn't feel like there was a lot of concern for pacing. The man starts off on the plot that the woman from the city comes up with to murder his current wife, but he can't go through with it. The wife, again billed as the wife, played by Janet Gaynor, is understandably terrified of her husband when she kind of figures it out, and flees. He chases after her, begging forgiveness, and some actual development and concern for pacing finally kicks into the movie. These two, the man and the wife, rekindle their love and are drawn back together. They go on this long journey through the very city that the woman from the affair wanted to take the man to. So without getting into spoilers, which seems like an absurd thing to say for a movie that's nearly 100 years old, director F.W. Murnau and the writers pull off some fateful justice for the climax of the movie that feels timeless in storytelling. Now, Sunrise is based on a short story from 1917 called The Excursion to Tilsit. The story can be found in a collection of stories by the same name. Herman Suderman wrote the original story. It was adapted for the screen by Carl Mayer. There are some story pacing and lack of development issues for the characters. Sure, I've kind of been over that already. But the movie was in the early days of film, and while storytelling has been around since there were humans to be able to tell stories, the art of storytelling and the craft has definitely undergone some fine-tuning and changes in the subsequent years. So the plot alone is not why Sunrise is on AFI's list of 100 best movies. Murnau, the director, implemented a new technology at the time, the Fox Movietone Sound-on Film system. This new technology allowed Sunrise to be one of the first feature films with a synchronized musical score and sound effects. I said one of the first, but I believe it was actually the first. The director also did some interesting things with framing and camera placement that would go on to influence future films. This would be Murnau's first American movie. He started his career in Germany. The director hated title cards, the cards that show the dialogue in silent films. He wanted the actors and the story to drive the audience's emotions and not just exposition dumped onto the screen so they could be told what to feel. So through the course of Sunrise, you'll notice that the title cards the audience gets are less and less, and there wasn't a lot to begin with. And by the end, there's virtually none. Sunrise features some elaborate sets. There are scenes of the man and the wife out on the town in whatever the big city was. So these were not filmed on location. I don't know if they just didn't have the technology, didn't have the desire, whatever it was. But an unprecedented $200,000 was spent on making this set. This led to Sunrise being a very expensive film to produce. To put it into perspective, that's almost $3 million in today's money. That is a lot for a single set. Fox would go on to use this set in other films to help offset the cost, and they also kind of reined in the budget for Murnau and his subsequent films. When Sunrise came out, it debuted to a lukewarm response. Talkies were the next big thing coming up in Hollywood. While Sunrise was revolutionary in its own way, with its scoring and sound effects, it wasn't exactly what the general audiences wanted. Critics liked the movie well enough, so maybe they had more long-term sight than the ticket-buying public, which kind of feels like the opposite today, but Sunrise is the only movie to win the Artistic Quality of Production, or also known as Unique and Artistic Picture Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts. This was at the first ever Academy Awards in 1929. Janet Gaynor, who played the wife, won the very first statue for Best Actress in a Leading Role. She would go on to win that honor 3 times in her career. Sunrise was one of the first 25 movies to be preserved by the National Film Registry. Unfortunately, the original 35mm print was lost in a fire, or not print, negatives, sorry, were lost in a fire in 1937. A new negative was created from a surviving print, but it's not the same as having the original. Sunrise would also be the first silent film to score a Blu-ray release in 2009. Despite its less than stellar reception in its day, we can look back and see cinema history. There are glimpses of modern storytelling, or timeless storytelling, and some deeper meaning behind the story. IMDb says that this movie is an allegory of the man fighting an internal battle, but when I was watching it, I took the movie more as a metaphor. This was the Roaring '20s. The Great War was over, and the Great Depression hadn't even come yet. The old, slower, calmer, rural way of life was giving way to industry and movement into cities. There was a cultural revolution in style, dance, music, drinking. Women were much more liberated than they ever had been, though admittedly there was still a long way to go on that front. The man in the movie was living his life and got the feeling of the grass being greener on the other side. The woman from the city was that other side. It was the change he thought he wanted. When he realized he was satisfied with his life and that the change for the sake of change wasn't always the best move, he made peace with that current life and, after a taste of the change, realized that he was fine where he was. Especially in the end, when he thought he lost the very way of life he was making peace with. Maybe I'm reading too far into things, maybe I'm reading it all wrong, but that was my experience with this movie. This movie was made on the verge of big changes and at a time in our history, our country's history, of big changes. So maybe that's just hindsight lighting the way for me, but that was my experience, which made watching this a much better experience than just watching it for plot. That's going to do it for 1927 Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Thanks for watching. Be sure to come back next week for number 81, Spartacus from 1960. Remember, these AFI countdown videos hit a week early for our patrons on Patreon. Tiers start at only $1 a month, and you get multiple monthly bonus shows for it. Be sure to listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. There's actually a whole slew of new merchandise designs that dropped January 1st. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments or leave us something on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. Thanks again.